this bag right here with the polar bears on it contains the print run, the entire print run that I've done so far of my new chapbook, Central Park, out from Rotcore International. Central Park. So this drops, I guess, Monday. I'm not really sure. I kind of want to do a proper launch. I did work. I'm trying to up my show personship here for the viewers out there. I'm trying to make it exciting. My presentation, that was like a big reveal at the top of the show. So yeah, my new book, Central Park. I'd like to do a proper book release, but I don't know. It kind of changes. It's never finished, You're constantly editing it. I printed 20 copies thanks to Columbia University Press and Ashley, who has been very helpful in bringing this new book into existence. And so, yeah, Central Park. I did work kind of hard on this, actually. I drew a cover, Typically, I've been real lazy about my last 2 years of books. I basically just slapped flyers on a couple of them. And that was like the cover, the open mic book. That was literally just the flyer from the fucking open mic that I just dragged into the LibreOffice image. I'm sponsored by LibreOffice, by the way. My book was entirely produced within LibreOffice. It's completely free. It's basically Microsoft Word, but it's totally free. It's just like I drew these fucking drawings. Did I explain this already in my live feed? I drew these drawings in my notebook. They're tiny. And I scanned them in with my phone. Like literally they're in this fucking notebook right here. That's the drawing. So it's small. It's, whatever fucking size this notebook is, 3.5 by 2 inches or whatever. And then you blow it up, of course you blow it up in the program, you throw some, that's Times New Roman, of course. So this is kind of a rip-off of the United Artists. United Artists was a New York school, Lewis Warsh and Bernadette Mayer publishing imprint. I mean, I suppose it was Lewis Warsh continued with it after they were divorced, but their book covers basically all look like this. Very... a lot of them were black and white, weirdly enough. I'm sure that was probably a monetary consideration, I guess. It just costs more, right, to print in color. My printer won't even print in color. What's the fucking point? It looks like shit. Black and white, I don't know. It always kind of looks good, right? I don't know. Especially if you have no budget. This was a filmmaking thing, too, when I was in my early 20s as a film director. I wanted to make everything in black and white, even though I never did, because my camera didn't have a black and white function. It had a sepia function. You could film a movie entirely in sepia for some goddamn reason. Make it look like some kind of one of those amusement park, like Old West photographs or whatever. Like, it's meant to affect some kind of, like, Civil War era. Like, Buster Keaton the General, I think, is in sepia. There's, like, a sepia filter on it or something. Makes it look like an old photograph or old pages or whatever. But I'm not exactly, I wanted to film everything black and white because like Woody, right? Manhattan. I've disabled the comments. I'm sorry. I'm experimenting with disabling the comments. I like having the comments, and it does feel like I need the comments, but I also feel like maybe I can stay on one subject longer without the comments, so I'm going to try it without the comments. We'll see how it goes. God, when I'm going in my head over what I'm going to talk about in my live streams, maybe this is just like the misery of my inner monologue, but I'm always like, I'm going to get on that live stream and I'm just going to really like take them all to task, and I'm going to really just like complain about everything, and I'm gonna have all this insightful, But then I get on and I'm like, I don't know if I can do that in front of people. I don't know if I'm ready to talk trash. I need to warm up a little bit first. I don't mean to talk trash. I'm not talking trash. It's just kind of dissecting the finer points of the literary world, the art world. I was watching this documentary on the lost generation in Paris in the 20s. They said, World War I created a vacuum. The entire generation had been slaughtered. And so the dollar was very strong. All of these artists moved to Paris to sort of get away from American isolationism. And they said it was the first international art scene, truly international. I'm not sure if that's true or not, but New York definitely feels very international. That's one of the things that I like about it. That's one of the things I love about doing the open mic. And being in Manhattan in particular, being kind of the center point of the 5-borough kind of constellation. We've been talking about constellations recently. Shout out to Philip. He was kind of just maybe trying to, I don't know, influence or coerce or talk me into writing more, thinking about constellation, which I do. I mean, to be honest, my books are constellations. That's why there's these stanzas, and that's why there's kind of like such fracture within the within the stanzas and within the moments. I mean, they are in the book itself also being a constellation. Of all the respective poems kind of floating within it. I mean, this book doesn't use as much of white space as maybe, but like to me these are sort of constellations. Even when they run together, they're sort of constellations, because unlike a lot of poets, I will cram wildly disparate things right next to each other in ways that just make no sense to anybody with no context. They make sense to me because it happened to me. But I don't know what somebody who's not me, who's reading it, experiences. To be honest, they're more than anything, they're meant to experience the form, because it's meant to inspire them to use it, or at least to like look at their life more closely. That's really all I'm trying to do. My poetry, okay, it is like a diary, and it is like, this is what I'm going to talk about. Basically, I'm going to defend, like I did last time, and sort of explain, I don't know, poetics of what I'm trying to do, even though you really shouldn't have to do that. I do feel like at a disadvantage because I don't get booked on a lot of stuff, right? I would like to get booked on everything, right? But I am like sort of a polarizing performer, I would say. And I don't really mean to be. I'd love it if everybody loved everything I did. But really, I'm just trying to set people on fire and get their lights on and get people catalyze the energy, catalyze, I thought that's what you were supposed to do as an artist. You're supposed to inspire people. You're supposed to inspire interpretations rather than just hand the audience everything on a fucking platter. And I mean, this is something Philip and I were getting into the other night, because Shakespeare is in the Delacour Theater, which figures heavily into my book Central Park. And Hamlet was like an obsession for me when I was in high school and stuff, because it was the poem Unlimited, right? As Harold Bloom's book is titled, Hamlet Poem Unlimited. Meaning it's sort of this endless piece of literature. It's endlessly fascinating. It's endlessly readable. You can see it. It's Shakespeare's kind of ultimate. It's the longest play, I think, right? And what's one of the things that's interesting about Hamlet, I feel, even though I haven't really even thought about it for 15 years, it's sort of something that I just figured, I thought I was going to play Hamlet. That was like my life goal when I was in fucking college, really. That was one of the few life goals I had. How fucking cheesy is that? And because it was kind of like this center point of literature, and being obviously sort of a white European male, Hamlet is this sort of ultimate role, or sort of like solipsistic portrayal of that. And that has been the history of Western literature for the last 500 years, at least as it was dictated to us for the most part by colleges and Harold Bloom and that kind of shit. Even though it wasn't entirely reduced to that. But, white guys dominated shit for the last few hundred years, right? And that's sort of what everybody was undoing, right? And that's great. I think that's really, but like, for me it was more like it became, it just wasn't that interesting to play Hamlet, maybe, I guess. It was more like the Spalding Gray move, where it's like you just become Hamlet, right? These are soliloquies, these are my monologues. This is Hamlet, right? Why the fuck do I need the play? I can write my own poem unlimited and live it, and that will be my to be, and fuck to be or not. I mean, we've heard it a million times. We just don't need it. We need a new version of that, right? We need it in new clothes, right? Or not, we don't even need it. Fuck it, we've heard it enough. To be honest, that is sort of how I feel about Shakespeare, although talking with Philip has inspired there, because everything is in Shakespeare, right? I mean, there is race, there is gender, there is all of these things, there's queerness, all of this is in the plays, and to be honest, it's pretty much in the forefront of the plays, and it is explicit. So I don't know that you can, but I don't know, I haven't looked that close at a Shakespeare fucking play in about a decade. Is that ignorant to say? It's remarkable how contemporary it is when I do look at him, how contemporary it feels, but in any case, Hamlet, one of the things that's interesting about it is it's a portrait of the character's psychology. You get a deeper psychology of that character. And in some ways, Shakespeare's plays are like novels. And in addition to being poems, in that you do get to see the character's inner psychology. That's what the soliloquy is. That's why the character goes, oh, I'm going to do this shit now, and sort of has this one-on-one with the audience, because it's like you're going into their head. And I don't know, maybe there is a need for that. It does feel like a pretty normal role, actually, for people to get up in front of other people and sort of externalize their inner situation. That doesn't necessarily seem to be a new form, actually. Like, that's probably something that's as old as anything that we do artistically. Maybe even the oldest. It's basically storytelling around a campfire or something, right? You're talking directly to the audience. It's one person. With Shakespeare, it's in a poem form typically, although Shakespeare does all this kind of shifting of the meter and even uses prose type things, right? It's just the meter and the form always reflects kind of the psychology of the characters or whatever the fuck is going on in the play, right? But one of the things about the Globe Theater and Shakespeare, the way they did it, is they didn't have sets. They didn't have, I mean, they may have had special effects and things like that, but it was like very minimal, the scenery. And so that's why he's painting all these pictures in words, right? Because the audience has to see the setting and the CGI and all the movie location type shit in their mind's eye. The poetry is what creates it. The sound of the language is a mimetic for the the mise-en-scène and the physicality, the smells. It's all in the poetry, right? Shakespeare is putting the architect, and this is something that I was thinking about my book, to be incredibly pretentious and compare myself, is my book is as much about architecture really as anything. And because the look of the fucking way it is constructed on the page is meant to reflect. You're trying to cram the whole world into, with poetry, right? You have sound and you have the alphabet, basically. And so you're using the pieces of that, clusters of vowels and consonants, and kind of recurring syllabic kind of nucleuses and parts, kind of, spare part. They're crammed together to form this thing, which is music, which actually does have a physical form, and it has color, and it has all the things. You put all of that into the poetry, right? There's a reason why our language is cut the way it is, because the sound of it, in some weird ancient mist that we don't quite understand anymore, but like the word door, right? It kind of looks like walking through a door in a weird way. The D kind of looks like a door with a knob, and then the two O's are almost like, I don't know, is that, or bed? You know how bed looks like bed? This is like a common, right? Those are just kind of like, there's other kind of more mystical ways that our language is sort of like, it's like packaging, or like, it's like luggage. It's like a container that includes nature, sound, what we see. It includes movement, That's all we fucking had, right? That's all people had until whatever, the papyrus or whatever, stone tablets. That was the only way they could carry information, right? And most of nature, birds singing or whatever, the ways that animals communicate, I would say is closer to that, maybe. Some kind of live, your body is this weird kind of accordion or instrument. It's like a pump organ, right? Like, it's kind of amazing, this kind of squeeze box that really shapes, and we breathe every single second. How do we keep that up? Literally, we breathe for 90 years straight. That's a pretty remarkable machine, that your body can just like keep breathing without even fucking thinking about it. Like, literally it never fucking stops. And that's one reason why my poetry never stops, okay? Like, this is something that, like, there is a lot of running together in my work. Although I do have stanza breaks and things from time to time. But, to be honest, or punctuation, this is something I was talking about with Ashley yesterday, is like, punctuation being kind of a lie. It's a way to give clarity to somebody who's trying to understand what you're trying to communicate, and so in that way it is considerate, but it's also not real. Our minds don't have punctuation. Life doesn't have. It's all continuous. There aren't really stops and starts, really. That's all in your fucking head. That's how we make sense of reality. That's how we pace things out, and we like that. We like those forms, but right? Meditation. One of the goals of meditation is to try to stop your inner monologue, or at least like center it, or get it sort of levitating in one place, get it sort of hovering over one thing. But it's still happening. It's still going on. It never actually does stop. And in fact, it takes, people who study meditation years to be able to even get to that point, if ever, where they can just stop their mind. I personally don't think that you can. And why should we? Part of, and maybe this is boring to just hear me explain, but part of the intent of my work is it is sort of like a guided meditation. It's guided through life. Like, we don't have the luxury to just sit and think about one fucking word. And who would want to be honest? I don't think we're meant to live that way. We are meant to, it's joyful participation in the sufferings of the world, right? Meaning you have to participate. You can't just sit. You can't just go live on a fucking mountain. Although that's sort of like the typical image of like the enlightened person. Somebody who's just meditating on a fucking mountain alone or something, which I don't think is actually accurate. Like, you need to be cycling through the world, and I think Bob is really the master, because he's migratory. He's constantly cycling through. That's very natural. People ask, like, the never-ending tour, like, why does he tour forever? It's like, it's natural to be migratory, to be nomadic, to keep walking, to keep moving, and to keep interacting, to keep flowing. Like, the stream never fucking stops, right? The water never stops. The flow of the river never fucking stops. I mean, maybe it'll go dry. That's not a good day. Still water, I don't know. To me, that's not... I suppose one of the purposes of art is to stop time and space, right? Like, that is what an artist is supposed to do, is sort of to trick you into that hypnosis where for a moment they can bend time and space and give you some kind of magical manipulation, which I guess is what discipline and I don't know. I wanted to hold the mirror, as it were, up to nature. Which I don't know, is that what Shakespeare does? Does Shakespeare hold the mirror? Is that how people were talking? It's a heightened realism. It's compressed. But you know, a lot of Shakespeare stuff he did copy. Like, I was in the Scottish play, I played Malcolm. And when you read Holinshed's Chronicles, or whatever the fuck, the history that's based on, the scenes that are described in that history are almost exactly what Shakespeare wrote. Not necessarily the dialogue, although there's parts of that too. Maybe even, you know, a lot of the memorable shit, I don't know. But I was surprised at how closely the scenes that I was doing, like, followed exactly what were in this history book that was written in, like, I don't even fucking know, you know, 1200 or 1500 or something, before. It was one of Shakespeare's source texts, right? Like, a lot of his plays are sort of based on, they're almost like cut-ups or mash-ups or remakes. Or, you know, like the Barbie movie, taking already existing intellectual properties. Are people psyched for the Barbie movie? I saw a huge fucking billboard. Mattel. I don't trust it because it's Mattel, okay? It's Mattel. They make the M16. They're part of the military-industrial complex. Of course they're trying to brainwash people with the fucking Barbie movie. Let's get Ryan Gosling and all the Will Ferrell and all the Disney, Saturday Night Live people who play ball with the neo-libs and the masters of war, the death merchants. Barbie is financed by blood in Vietnam. The rock and roll war. I heard somebody call it the other day. I'm all over the place. It's my verbal jazz, okay? You just got to go with me. Boom, boom, bap, bap, bap. I watched this documentary about Lenny Bruce on the 4th of July. I did my patriotic duty by watching a documentary about Lenny Bruce on the 4th of July and our First Amendment rights. I mean, Lenny just loved life. What an amazing human being. I mean, but he was killed by the judicial system. He was killed by the courts, just like Jim Morrison. They were both convicted and sentenced to the workhouse. Could you imagine getting sentenced to the workhouse? That's cruel and unusual, if you ask me. And they went after Lenny Bruce in a way that was really not fair. And it was similar, to be honest, to the obscenity cases with fucking Ulysses and Howl. You know, they said it was pornographic. They said what he was saying basically was pornographic, and he shouldn't say that stuff on stage. But it was just they wanted to bring him down. You know, his energy was just, he wouldn't buckle. But eventually they broke him. I mean, when you get caught in like a legal thing where it's just like you're in court all the time, you're paying for lawyers, you're losing. He was obsessed with his court case. You know, that was like his act. The last few years, he just talk. You know, he'd read his transcripts on stage and stuff. But you know, one of the things about I mean, this is a completely different subject, but then again, maybe not. It's all speech, really. Um, the thing that I hear about Lenny Bruce, like I heard a comedian say this the other day, is like if you act like you think Lenny Bruce is funny, like no, you don't. Like you're just pretentious. You're trying to act, you know, because to be honest, the first time I listened to Lenny Bruce when I was in high school, you know, of course I had heard from George Carlin, like Lenny Bruce was like, and you know, Lenny Bruce was kind of like this famous cultural whatever martyr. The Bob Dylan song, obviously, is a classic, a timeless classic. And but if you listen to Lenny Bruce's albums, it is one of those things that it's not packaged and emphatic, and there's tons of space in it like modern comedy. You know, modern comedy is all about telling the audience to laugh. It's really about the music of what that's supposed to sound like. And all these fucking comedians sound the same, and they leave these huge spaces in their work because that's what it is now. It's become this weird. You know, I was having an interesting conversation with it about it last night with Diego, who was just saying it's like the these clubs in Manhattan. It's like they're trying to do this thing that was like 10, 20 years ago. They want these people that are like, but it's very like right wing. It's very, you know, it's like Nick DiPaolo or Jim Norton or Opie and Anthony type, and Louis, of course. These kind of like, you know, they're all like Joe the Plumber. You know, Joe Rogan being, they're just guy, Norm, you know. And there is this kind of like, part of what's annoying about it is like with poetry. It's like you hear these forms that are just kind of cheesy and like really spoon feeding the audience, and the audience needs that, to be honest. Whereas Lenny Bruce, it's like you put him on and you're just like, what the fuck? He's like stopping and starting himself. He's like jabbering. He's using this weird kind of, you know, he talks basically. I feel like what one of the things that Lenny Bruce did was he was sort of like one of the people that sort of smuggled jazz or like underground or black, to be honest, vernacular and sort of like speech music and the art of that. The art, I mean, if you read like fucking, what's that book by Mesro, Really the Blues, and all these guys, Kerouac, Tom Waits, they're all trying to do like hep cat shit from like the 30s and 40s or whatever. They're using, and so Lenny Bruce, I feel like, is sort of one of these guys where like he's really talking like kind of a jazz musician, right? And what he does is sort of third stream humor, to use the wavy gravy Hugh Romney term, which is like that's kind of what I relate to this. I relate to this period of time a lot because it's an improvisation. It was a time of improvisation. Like David Lynch said, there was a poetry that ran through the 50s. You know, and there was a thoughtfulness, there was an intellectualness, there was a conscientiousness. You know, the bomb had just been dropped, World War II had just happened, the GI Bill. There were a lot of educated young men who had just been in the war, and women. And you know, in the 50s, things like jazz. I mean, even the early rock and roll was jazzy, and there is kind of like, if you listen to that late 50s moment with Gene Vincent and Eddie Cochran, Buddy Holly, they're doing really, really interesting, you know, things that would sort of presage the recording advances of the 60s. But I also think the 60s and the Beatles and multi-track recording and sort of the perfection of that was the beginning of the end of this kind of live feeling. One of the things about jazz is it's live, it's a conversation, it happens in the moment. It's not about multi-track recording. It's not about, oh, let's go back and do that again and we'll punch it in. I mean, I suppose it can be, but I feel like part of what jazz is like that back and forth and that kind of snap, crackle, and pop of just like you say this, I say, and in the group. And it's like when I was a kid, I always liked multiplayer games. I like Mario Party or wrestling games. It's like you want everybody to have fun at the same time. You don't want it to just be one person hogging the controller. Whereas like multi-track recording, the 60s, the Beatles get all this fucking they pioneered all these advances in tapes and to be honest, that was the beginning of like needing things to be perfect, needing and not that that's a bad thing, but it's just amazing. Live music still exists, but I do feel like consuming media on the internet or there's an expectation of like perfection that like is part of the consumer kind of like gloss of all of this. Like the Beatles, pop art, right? Abstract expressionism being sort of a corollary in the 50s. Frank O'Hara, I do this, I do that. I mean, maybe that's old news. It feels like a mistake to judge improvisational form like it was some kind of fad or some kind of like postmodern thing that's like over now. Because like, to be honest, improvisation and live performance is something that has been going on, as long as human culture has been going on. Whereas the perfection of recording techniques and things are relatively new advances. And so our ears are accustomed to perfect sounding records and perfect records, and we want that. But I think we're still fed by live, group, in-person, in that interchange. And so with somebody like Lenny Bruce, there is this kind of like scat quality or like soloing quality or like, like when I was younger, guitar solos meant nothing to me. I hated fucking guitar solos. They made no sense to me. I didn't understand what the fuck they were at all. Like, I saw so many fucking guitar solos as a kid. I had no idea. They're abstract. They're pure paint. But they also do have sort of meaning or like they can sound like things and that gives them meaning, right? Like there's a reason why the fucking music of the mid 20th century all sounds like trains or whatever or cars or it's like I was saying with the poetry. They're getting the sound of the world into their music, and that's kind of the magic of it. If you can make your guitar sound like the city of Chicago or the Lower East Side, or sort of an abstract musicalized in the Final Fantasy VII sound font, in a different sound font, right? The sound font of an upright bass or a piano or, a fucking 88 or whatever the fuck they are, or these modular synthesizers or YouTube DJing or, the goal is to get the sound, the metaphor, the experience, like Coltrane says, it all has to do with it, right? It all has to do with it. He's playing everything. He's playing his whole experience, right? Maybe we're not in as panicked of a moment, but to me, that's what I am trying to do. I'm just trying to write everything down and just play it all out. The catharsis of that. And to imitate life, I suppose, in a way. Structure, I suppose that's the point of form, is to like make things a little more understandable to an audience or something. A lot of, like Shakespeare. A a lot of his plays have the same form. It's 5 acts, and it's the climax is in this, and blah blah blah. And it's like, but it's also he's borrowing form from these history books and things like that by just like copying what actually happened, and maybe, you know, he might change or this or that for his own kind of dramatic purposes. I think Shakespeare would be they them, to be honest. I think Shakespeare would definitely be they them. If Shakespeare were alive, they would definitely be trans. There's no fucking question. They were queer trans even back then. You know, the Chandos portrait, Shakespeare's got that earring. You can tell from the Chandos portrait that Shakespeare was queer. I think that's cool. That's great. I mean, it's in the fucking sonnets. It's all addressed to a young male. And the plays, it's like Shakespeare was poly. He was pansexual. He had to be. I mean, come on. They had to be. Shakespeare would probably have the XI pronouns or some kind of, you know, super future. Was Shakespeare futuristic? I mean, this was something I was thinking about is, I mean, like we were talking about Othello, right? I mean, Othello is about race. Like, definitely. And, you know, it's sort of presages, or, I mean, The Tempest, right? Caliban, that's about imperialism. That's about, you know, he was fitting these issues that are still very much, I guess that's part of the magic of Shakespeare, right? And what makes Shakespeare sort of, not of an age, but for all time, as Ben Jonson memorably put it. And the Mermaid Tavern. Is KGB? Is KGB the Mermaid Tavern? Some places got to be the Mermaid Tavern. The Orchidia was the Mermaid Tavern. Living in the moment, you know, is really the only thing there is. We balance, you know, and that's, my poetry is constantly standing on top of the moment, you know, to the point that it will just like reset. But it's also like, I don't know, maybe this is old fashioned, but like the advance of cubism, like I feel like we're in a more multi POV'd and multi kind of vantage maybe than we've ever been. I don't know though. I'm still committed to the human in a way that maybe is like a losing battle. You know, all of this indicates, it's like I think of 2001, right? Like the technology really is what guides us in a way. You know, like once we have a new tool, that's when, to be honest, that's what causes new advances in art and shit like that. You know, like we were talking about Cezanne. McLuhan talks about Cezanne was the first painter to move from a visual to an audio tactile dimension. And it's like this because of advances in technology at the time. Photography, the telephone, electricity, all of this new shit was happening that influenced and made capable these changes in the art. The changes in the art are like a reflection. And sometimes, and obviously sometimes like a premonition, right? Like Cezanne and pointillism, part of the point of it, no pun intended, pointillism and Cezanne, impressionism, the colors sort of separating. You know, with pointillism, it's like they're pixels, right? Every dot is its own island and its own separate kind of chamber. And the colors are sort of broken down in Cezanne. You start to see, you know, the different parts of the pear are different colors and they're separate, almost like a yin and yang almost. But that gives it kind of a dimension and you can kind of see it you know, these things were presaging digital and television pixelization of everything, you know, screens. Those were artistic kind of prophecies. But like Kubrick's whole thing in 2001, right? Like when the ape learns to use tools and opposable thumbs, all the way to the present with the AI, right, in the fucking spaceship. You know, that could be happening right now. I mean, it is, really. That is the exact moment we're in, right? We're trying to go to Mars. We're trying to colonize space. We're trying to exploit space. We're trying to imperialize space. It's the same white explorer shit, except it's Elon Musk. We're trying to go to Mars instead of India. We'll probably end up on fucking Pluto or something. I live on Neptune, personally. Um, but, right, the AI hijacks the override. He's on an override, and he hijacks the live stream, and that's what's going to happen to humanity probably in the next century, right? The millennium. I really do think that the millennium, even though it was like this symbolic, like really meaningless, like there is no such thing as the millennium or time or anything. It's like a group hallucination. It's a mass uh, derangement or like belief. And but at the same time, I mean, the computer, the internet, the cell phone, all of these things were invented right around, or at least like came into common usage right around the millennium. You know, Y2K may not have actually happened, although who knows? Maybe that was the beginning of the simulation. But in a certain way, it did happen. You know, like that old world is dead. The world of the human beings and live music. Now we live in zombie land. You know, 9/11, right? 9/11 being another thing that happened like pretty much right on, you know, more or less in cosmic time. All of those things happened on the millennium, right? Being the death of the old world. And this is always happening, but the millennium and the Kali Yuga and the drawing to a close of all of these cosmic cycles. Like there are things that are ending that are like uh you know, thousands and thousands and thousands of years old. So it's just like we have to get used to everything in our life changing, right? Or at least like you can't just rely on old ideas. And that is one thing I wonder about with my own stuff. It's like, am I just copying a bunch of fucking modernist stuff from the last century? It's like, what is, you know, like Ezra Pound said, make it new. What does that mean right now? You know, like a lot of the artists that I know experiment with the AI stuff, the AI generator, that's their way of making it new, because it is the newest thing, I suppose, you know? You know, I do this, although maybe this isn't that new at this point. I mean, people have been live streaming, you know, on a big level for decades at this point. But vlogging, whatever, and I try to make my form new. I mean, I thought we were moving to a world of short attention span, you know, our multitasking. Everything happening at once, everybody saying everything, everything getting drowned out. There's just no way to get ahead. There's no way to get noticed. Everybody's sort of like, you know, the respective, you know, regality of their little social media fiefdom. That's like their pseudo art career, which they don't really make that much money from. they have to professionalize their art in all these weird ways, become academics or just like become an influencer, if that's still a thing. Do YouTube videos for Christ's sake. Live stream constantly. How do we make it new? To be honest, that once again, the technology is part of this, and so it does feel like like even my zines, right? This is not a new technology really at all. That's part of the point of why I do it. Is chapbooks, are they're century as long as there's been printing press, there's been chapbooks, right? Probably even longer than that. I mean, you can make a chapbook in an edition of one. I'm sure they've been doing that for millennia. But, having something in print, having something in a book is not really a new, I ripped this form off, Taylor Mead, and, Diary of an Anonymous New York Youth. He would sell chapbook style installments of his latest quips and sort of, witticisms on the subway and shit. He had a little stand. And so, but also, what's a new way we can do this? Like I said, I made this with LibreOffice on my laser printer, or at the laser printer at Columbia University Press. The writing is new. I mean, literally the last poem in this book was, June 20th, so it's new in that sense. Unlike a lot of poets who would take 3 years or something to put a book out, I put a book out every 4 months. And so my books are meant to be like periodicals and almost like a newspaper. They're meant to be news that stays news, hopefully. I'm making predictions, or with this book, I'm trying to, trace things that are happening in our society and get people to notice them. Critique. It's an economic, it's a socialist pamphlet. It's samizdat, right? It's as much a political statement, right? But also, I mean, we can still print. I think, once again, a McLuhan thing, the medium is the message, right? And so, as artists, putting your poetry through these different mediums, I think, is a way of getting a different message out, maybe. This book, I can give it away for free at a reading. And I've had people, people come up to me whenever I give them away and say, hey, I read your book on the train. Or, a lot of times I'll go to people's houses and they have my book on their shelf. That means a lot to me. That makes me a real writer as much as anything, Whereas having a poetry magazine on the internet or digital or on an Instagram account, a lot of those links go dead. It's very easy for things on the internet to disappear. And in fact, they disappear as soon as you close your browser window. As soon as you close all your tabs, as soon as you turn your phone off, this is hanging out with you in the room. You look at the drawing, and it's like you have a little fucking piece of art or something, that you bought too, right? And this is 11 sheets of paper staple, right? This is like if you wrote a fucking paper for your college class that was 11 pages long, or a short story, and printed it out, be the same fucking thing, except it's authority of the medium. By folding it, by stapling it, by giving it a page order, by giving this intention, a lot of the push of our society is trying to disable people as artists and as having their own agency and as doing things for themselves, for each other, appreciating each other. They want you to pay attention to mass media. They want you to pay attention to the big publishing, the big superstar authors, the big meat that they're packaging for everybody, the big names. But it should be a cross transaction. You know, this is what I love about poetry is it's sort of naturally a small community because nobody cares. There isn't that much celebrity culture. You know, it's pathetic when poetry imitates celebrity culture, which it does constantly on this small kind of microeconomy of poetry. But there are no celebrity poets except James Franco and maybe Amber Tamblyn and Suzanne Summers. All the celebrity poets were already celebrities. They didn't get famous from their poetry, I don't think. Maybe E. E. Cummings and Allen Ginsberg. I suppose everybody knows who Walt Whitman is. And Shakespeare. Shakespeare's a big celeb. His brand is as strong as probably ever. It's Summer of Hamlet. We're externalizing our inner psychology via soliloquies, a la the Dane. You know, he's got a girlfriend, Hamlet. He's got Ophelia. He's got like this hot girlfriend who's like super like a Lana Del Rey. I mean, can we get Lana Del Rey in a fucking Hamlet? Who are the Hamlet of this generation? I suppose it'd be maybe Elliot Page and Lana Del Rey. I want to see that Hamlet. You know, whereas like doing a live stream is very different. People are watching on this phone. But, you know, part of what I think about is how do I bring a literary experience to these new forms, these new mediums? You know, I mean, literature, I suppose the word itself means paper or something, doesn't it? I mean, it implies like a paper and like a page and like a real physical book. I think that's literally what literature means. I can't look it up right now. I could be wrong about that. So in a certain way, I mean, you know, can video literature even be a thing? I think, you know, the talking as a form, trying to fit your poetry into these new forms is a way of making it new, making poetry videos, making poetry movies, live streaming, social media, right? Poetry memes, that's like a huge fucking thing that like a lot of poets are out there doing. But I also think that there's like a novelty to a lot of this stuff that like people get a lot of credit. And it's cool to make things new and to be super popular, but there's also something that's like super trendy and like fashion. And sort of like, I mean, Ezra Pound was a fascist, right? He was a Nazi. I mean, or he was, you know. And so should we listen to what he has to say? I mean, are there eugenics at the heart of I mean, I've never read the cantos, but I think in a certain way that my poems are cantos because they are just sort of like these like frequencies or like wave forms. They're almost like a polygraph or something. They have like this, you know, like Philip Whalen, you know, the mind graph. His poems are sort of just like, once again, maybe this has already happened. Maybe this is the avant-garde of the 60s. It's not new anymore. But I don't see anybody else doing it. And we do live in this, like, posts. You know, everything is time-stamped. Everything is kind of disposable. And, like, just like we can publish anything. I mean, Twitter, you know, more people will probably see a Twitter post than will see my book, you know. I can post a video on YouTube or like, you know, some of my Instagram posts have got 1,500, you know, impressions or whatever the fuck they are. It's like, that's probably, you know, I suppose in the whole lifespan of my book, maybe 1,500 people. I guess this is obvious. I'm just like talking about obvious shit to everybody. It's just you know, part of my point is like, I don't think making it new is the only thing. You know, like I suppose maybe this is why I'm not cool, or I'm sort of like a prematurely curmudgeon or something, but like, I suppose a lot of my work has a quality of being like new and old guy shit. Or at least like, I feel like maybe that's one way of looking at it. Like this more or less looks like a Raymond Pettibon kind of thing from the 80s, right? My drawing style, not that I conscientiously ripped off Raymond Pettibon, but it's, I like the G2. It's a wet line, and it's part of the notebook and the kind of like field notes and the like life stenographer. This is what I saw. This is my perception. It's a way of framing that and giving the reader sort of a conceptual, it's like an album cover or something, giving them a conceptual kind of visualization for them to, that's sort of a lens, these super talls and shit. But also the pastoral quality. That's all in the book. So, I mean, this is sort of like, this could have been made maybe in the 80s or something. I don't know if I could have made it with quite this kind of, it probably would have, it would have looked Xeroxed and shit. Like, there's a clean look to this that is kind of new, because I use a fucking scanner app on my phone, and, digital publishing, or desktop publishing, I guess is what you call it. Desktop publishing. But, to be honest, I don't even bother to publish writing, like, on the internet, because it just feels, I don't want to read anything on the fucking internet. I don't want to read anything on my phone. I feel like, to be honest, the sculpture of the way it looks is very important. And depending, what the website does and the HTML and what your orientation is on how you're holding your phone, it could destroy the look, or at least change it. And that's my own limitation. There are tons of people who are my age and younger and older who are, happy to read fucking Hot Pink Mag online, or, Peach Magazine. And those are great magazines. They're fantastic. And they get huge distribution because they can be on the internet, So it's like we're at a weird, interesting time. I hope it goes on like this. I hope the technology doesn't take over everything, although that's kind of what the pandemic was, right? Like Zoom was just everything. And even this, I'm talking to a fucking phone right now. I'm not talking to an audience. There's nobody even watching. I bored people right out of the stream. We're like androids, we've got one foot in the old world, one foot in the new. And maybe people feel like that all the time. Maybe they felt like that 100 years ago. Holy shit, we got newspapers and trains and the telegraph. The, what's this thing? Beep, 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 beep. We got radios. Ha-cha-cha. We're machines. We're all machines. With these automobiles and these telephones. But now it really does feel like, you can live your life online. And, people are extremely online, and they can be online. And why not? You can be disembodied completely. That was one of the interesting, people want to, like, disown their bodies. People want to, like, divorce themselves from their bodies in a way that, like, I don't, granted, like, I guess but, sure, like, I'm in a privileged body, I suppose, but, like, my body also gives me a lot of pain, like, I'm in pain constantly. So, like, I understand, these bodies are kind of like these weird, we are animals in a crazy way, we need to eat, and we behave like animals. We are animals, like, literally, we like to put ourselves, but even, if you have 40 human beings gathering in a room, it's like a bunch of animals. It's interesting, that we're existing on this very civilized level, but we're also just kind of like, there's a lot of, knee-jerk kind of anger and pain and ego. There's a lot of ego. I'm trying to defeat. I can't, though. Okay, so this is something I did want to talk about. I do want to just complain about. That was the whole impetus for this whole thing. Was like I'm complaining basically about why people don't book me. And like, am I avant-garde, or do I just annoy people? And are they the same? I mean, performance art. I guess I like being I like doing performance art. Like System Lord, it was so great playing with System Lord because I just love going to the limit. With System Lord, you can just go absolutely berserk. And as a human being, as an animal, sort of howling at the moon, I do think that that's important. I don't want to divorce my body. I don't want to be just some like face in a window on the internet. It's important to me. This is the open mic, right? And I've talked about this before. The open mic is the gathering around the sacred fire. It's the circle. Once a week, everybody come, you gather in person, and we're breathing together. And this was one of the interesting things about listening to the Spotify tracks, right? The difference between these performers in person and how they sound and what their instrumentation, and then the tracks online. I think both are beautiful. They both should exist, right? We don't need to abandon the old. We don't need to throw out the old. I think our society, we live in a world of planned obsolescence and disposability. That's new. I was walking around Manhattan looking at these buildings, these brownstones and shit that they built, 100 years ago, and I was just thinking, they built this stuff before planned obsolescence. There was no sense of, we want to build a house that's going to last for 30 years so it'll fall apart. They need to replace the roof and the fucking this and that, like they do now, like these MI homes, which are basically designed to last as long as your mortgage because it's a fucking business, right? I mean, maybe I'm idealizing it. I'm sure it was a business then. I'm sure they used cheap materials, but like they also built shit to last, it seems like. That's just not a priority anymore. And so with our culture, you just have disposability with people, old people, old people don't matter. It's all about youth. It's all about new, right? It's all about making it new. Whatever the newest, youngest, hottest, the old people, who gives a fuck about them? But it's like, this is something I've been thinking about recently, and I've tried to do better at the open mic, is like, you can't just, like, I have old people that come in who aren't on Instagram. Or I've had people start Instagram accounts just so they can message me to get on the list. It's like, I should be better about trying to include old people. Not to, call them old or anything, but like, there should be a holistic quality to all of this stuff. You should try to touch all the dimensions of everything. And you should try, that includes generationally, that includes, genre-wise, that includes, how you experience life. You don't, and like I'm saying with all this media, we're trying to touch all these different formats and all these media, in-person performances, the Easy Paradise Summer Concert Series. I should pimp that. July 22nd at Young Ethel's. July 27th, that's the Easy Paradise Summer Concert Series. July 27th at Otto's Shrunken Head in the East Village. That's a Thursday. That is the New York Poetry Festival launch pre-festival party on Thursday. Come out Thursday night, 6 to 10 p.m. at Otto's Shrunken Head and party with us. The pre-game party for the New York City Poetry Festival. Then July 29th, 11 a.m., we're at New York City Poetry Festival. Of course, we're there every Monday at KGB Bar. The sacred circle, the sacred fire is lit. The sacred fire is lit. It's important for it to be lit. I have to be high energy. I do feel like just the vibe. People are tranquilized by drugs, by antidepressants, and a lot of the vibe of the generation now is very chill. It has been since I've been an adult. Millennials are very chill, and I'm not like that. I'm very hot. I'm not cool, as McLuhan would say. Is it a cool medium or a hot medium? You know, literature I think is a hot medium because the reader has to participate. A hot medium. I could be wrong about that. Whereas like TV I think is a cool medium because it kind of does all the work for you. It kind of it's like an anesthetic. It's you've been lobotomized by television, like he says in My Dinner with Andre. You know, so I do think this stuff matters, right? I think receiving the poetry by reading it on the page, I think hearing it in person, live, I think hearing it online is equally good. You know, the open mic is meant to be like a podcast. You really don't even have to watch it. It's really meant to be, and this too. You really don't have to watch this. This is meant to be like a sonic, first and foremost. It's meant to be like, you know, I'm going to put on the open mic and just listen to it while I'm at work or whatever. It's 3.5 hours long. It's 5 hours long. So like if you're on a long drive, you know, if you're on a flight, if you're in jail, if you're in a situation where you just need to eat up tons of time while you're doing something else, if you're at work, put on the open mic and just listen to it. It's meant to be just like a dispatch in that way. The visual is there too, so you can watch it. But I do think there's something about the visual that supplants your mind's eye. I think listening, this is something that artists of kind of that generation, Wallace Shawn and Andre and Terry Gilliam, they all talk about they were raised on radio. You know, they were born before television. And so when their early childhood, they listened to the radio. And so they have vivid imaginations because they pictured everything. Now it's just, once again, everything is CGI'd and it's all, you know, Marvel Cinematic Universe or even Netflix. You know, we are bombarded by these home theater systems. Those Maxell tape commercials were prophetic. The way that people just sit in their living rooms and just, you know, like they have fucking THX movie theaters in every home in America, you know. The dream is real. Everybody's got a screening room. Which I think is great. Once again, that's just another experience you want to touch on. You don't want it to dominate your life per se, but it's beautiful to be able to sit at home and watch movies on a fucking theater quality fucking image size. You know, or sort of halfway in between. Just like TV now is sort of halfway between TV and movies. People's experience of this shit is sort of halfway in between TV and movies. So I've tried to keep up with that. You know what I mean? Like if you look at what I'm doing, maybe it's not the most impressive fucking thing in the world, but I do try to do it in my own poet kind of modest. I think there's something to be said for modesty. And like not trying to like dominate the audience with your genius or whatever. Or your technical, you know, over-articulation. You know, I do think something has been lost because people spend so much time with technology. You hear it in the music. The music is not, it doesn't sound like flesh and blood and real. Like I was listening to some fucking recording the other day from, you know, pre-computer, and the way the dude was hitting the bass drum, I was just like, you can totally hear this guy's emotions in the way he's hitting this fucking bass drum. In the way it's, you know, it's just like, there's no way you're going to get a computer to sound like that. I'm sorry, it'll never happen. It'll never happen. I don't care how good the AI gets, it will never fucking happen. Because it's based in, like, the leather of our skin and shit. You know, like, the skin of that drum, The fucking pedal, it's a heartbeat, you know? That guy's heartbeat is in that fucking, that sound. And the sound is real. It's not some studio canned thing. You can hear the room they're in, you know? That's all important. That's all part of the beauty of it. That's all part of the sort of blur of the art and the synecdoche and the synesthesia, right? It's like it's all, you know, the beer bottles, the smell of the beer, the crowd, the wooden speakers, you know. I remember when I was a little kid going to these venues, everything was made out of wood. This fucking PA, the speakers. My dad talks about in the 70s with disco, that was the beginning of like DJs, right? And they didn't need a live band anymore. In the 70s, he could get a gig in a Holiday Inn lounge where he'd play all night and he'd have a place to live because they didn't have a fucking, you know, it wasn't like now where they just have a fucking, those jukebox things that every goddamn song ever made, you know? It was like you needed live entertainment. I mean, I suppose the big bands and all that shit could say the same thing, but it's just like there's less and less use for more and more people, right? Like computer or celebrity automated kind of proliferation of product can do the job of a live performer or an individual local artist, right? They don't need you. They have PewDiePie or Bo Burnham, somebody who's better than you. You know, they have somebody who's doing what you're trying to do, but like just like streamlines it, makes it easily digestible, and just like hits the fucking bullseye. And they're 6'5" and they're gorgeous. Like, they don't need you. They found like, you know, the unicorn, right? And so what the fuck are the rest of us supposed to do? The people who are not unicorns, the mules, the donkeys, the jackasses. What the fuck are we supposed to do? We're caught in these agonizing flesh prisons. We have to feed ourselves constantly. It's amazing to me how much we have to eat. We're just constantly screaming for consumption. Like a human body takes a lot of energy to keep going. And so there needs to be distribution and all this stuff. I suppose there is, right, with the internet, but maybe I'm preaching to the choir. Maybe I'm just like being redundant or something, but I'm trying, I guess, to, well, I'm complaining because I don't get booked on anything. Well, I do get booked on things. I'm doing this really exciting reading the July 24th at KGB. I mean, I live to perform, clearly. This is what I'm trying to work on. Last night I was at Grizzly Pear in Midtown. That was a trip. It was fun. You know, it's just a fun thing to... I don't care that it's depressing and there's nobody there. I like it that there's nobody there. If there were people there, it might push me. I mean, that would be good, but... Poets like space, right? There's something antisocial about the poet, or I don't know, our society, everything is trying to get people to be so social and so friendly and so, I don't know. Maybe not. I mean, now it seems like everything's about authenticity, and that's good, but I don't know. I'm plagued by like this Midwestern like niceness. Like it's just like compulsive. And I don't know. People think that's like that you're bullshitting them. You know, they think you're lying to them. They think you're but I don't know. It's part of trying to look at the bright side, or trying to I guess I don't do that with everything. I mean, with these gigs, I'm like super negative when I find out there's something I'm not on, or somebody got booked instead of me. But it's like my performance style is polarizing. I wish I could tone it down. I wish I could make it more like agreeable to the audience. I guess it's like a kind of fear, you know, like I'm afraid that the audience is gonna like not like me if I try to do something sincere, or if I try, you know, like maybe the audience won't like that, so I have to like uh do something that just like nobody else is doing, or you know, ambush the audience with like high energy. You can kind of trick the audience. You know, I try to like, because my poetry doesn't really seem, to be honest, and this is gonna sound fucked up, but I think I'm writing on a a higher level than most people can. But it's also just like gibberish. Like I am kind of a dumbass too. Like my piano playing, right? I should work on my piano playing. I'd like to get this fucking thing working and like find an AC adapter for it and like actually kind of learn how to play some piano a little bit. But there's also something to be said for just like putting tons of energy out and just trying to like cathartically uh you know, it's got to come out of your esophagus, you know, you're pushing it out, you're it's almost like twisting balloon doggies or something. Like you really do feel like the physicality of the language, of the music, of the note, of the, you know, that's what I hear when I hear John Coltrane's recordings from the mid 60s or free jazz type things, Miles Davis, where they're just honking. You know, it's like skronk, because they're so, I mean, maybe that's not the moment that we're in. That was like, you know, but I don't know. I'm trying to figure out a way to be more relaxed as a performer, and I guess as a person. A lot of it, I guess, is just frustration, right? Frustration, anger. These are audiences. This fueled a lot of the art, right, of the male kind of dominated boomer era rock and roll, or even Scorsese movies, fucking, you know, those directors. So there's a lot of violence, Coppola in all those movies, Dennis Hopper, even David Lynch movies, there's a lot of violence, you know, like ultra violence. Kubrick, there's a lot of violence. Although Kubrick, it feels less like he's working out his personal hostility. It feels like he's trying to give you sort of an objective thought about the human race. It really does feel like every Kubrick film is about some pivot point, like in the human race. And he's like trying to say, like, here's the story of how it fucking happened. You know, like this is, you know, the atomic bomb. This is space. This is, you know, media kind of inspired violent young men. You know, I mean, those guys in Clockwork Orange are like alt right. They, you know, it's weird. I've known people that like to like dress up like them and shit. My uncle Alan was really into the Moogies or whatever the fuck they're called, Droogies. Or, you know, Full Metal Jacket, War. I mean, I think this country has become, like, highly fucking militarized. They want to assassinate the artist. They don't want people to even be able to appreciate art. You know, the art is always mixed with some kind of insane violence. Like, even The Sopranos, right, was sort of that formula. Mafia plus normal life, or, you know, American satire sort of portrait. But it's like they still gotta cut a guy's head off and put it in a fucking bowling bag to get people to watch. I mean, Mad Men was less, it felt less, I mean, the way that was exploitative was like, let's just get all these hot people. Let's get Don, you know, the ultimate, you know, fuck daddy Draper, and, you know, it was like the aesthetic was like, it was, you know, it was a soap opera kind of. there was intrigue, but there wasn't really like. That's what I liked about Mad Men. I mean, Breaking Bad, right, about meth, euphoria, teenagers having sex, doing drugs. I don't know. What is Succession about? Rich people. It doesn't feel like we're in quite the peak TV moment. You know, it felt like 10 years ago, these were like the central fucking like aspects of our culture. There were just like these titanic fucking shows. You know, that just like that stuff is still a big part of our culture, but it doesn't quite feel like that at the time. That did feel like the golden age, or like they were making things that were maybe like somewhat comparable to, I don't know, other golden ages of pop art, 60s music. I mean, maybe it wasn't that good, but 70s filmmaking, you know, the long form narrative television. That's why, that was one of the reasons why I started doing Scenes from a Life, right? Was to participate in that, you know, it being a new medium. I don't think that's going to go away. It just makes sense to have stories that go on for 100 hours or 200 hours, or with story, you know. Once again, a lot of these things were dictated by the technology that was available at the time, right? Now they can do this. You know, 50 years ago, you had 3 channels, commercials, shows aired once a week. People would forget what the fuck was going on. If they missed it, they couldn't DVR it. There weren't even fucking VCRs, right? So once again, it's like a way of making it new. You know, as far as I know, there aren't that many literary people doing vlogs and trying to fill this medium with writing, you know. That's what I'm trying to do with these live streams. Rather than sitting at my journal and writing for 2 hours, I do this instead. It's a way of sort of, you know, I go back to this Eno quote constantly about the boundaries, the blurs between the spaces, right? The overlaps between the forms are often the most interesting places, or just, I don't know, the most natural places for me. You know, the Spalding Gray thing. To me, that was a literary, he's like a playwright, right? Spalding Gray, I think you could say, was a playwright. You know, if you want to put it in some kind of like normal literary terms that people can understand. He wrote one-person monologues, right? I mean, I think he wrote it by talking, but they published a lot of his stuff as books. And so it exists that way too. You can listen to his monologues just on audio. They're super pleasurable to listen to. Audiobooks, right? I think everyone should record an audiobook. Like, every poet should have a fucking audiobook of every one of their books. It's just... It's as good of a way, I think, for people to consume it, actually, at this point in history. You know, people are out in the world, driving, walking, jogging, you know, going to class, going to work. They're on trains, they're in parks, they're listening to their headphones. Like, get your poems on Spotify, get your poems on fucking podcasts, get your poems on YouTube, right? And so, you know, this is a blur of live performance, oral, lecture. I think lectures are one of the best forms of show business. We need to bring that back. There should be celebrity, not TED Talks. TED Talks, see, once again, everything in our culture, because it has to go for some kind of mass appeal, it's just like it just gets packaged and emphasized in a way that, like, it's a TED Talk. That's like the new public lecture. And it's like, it's 15 minutes and it's almost like a self-help seminar. It's like a PowerPoint. It's like, what if I told you, you know, it's like, I'd rather hear Emerson just talk for fucking 2 hours. I'd rather hear David Anton, or I'd rather hear Alan Watts, or I'd rather hear Terrence McNally, or I'd rather hear, you know, I was listening to this interview with Mike Love the other day that was totally insane. You know, like, I'd rather hear Ann Waldman talk for 2 hours. I'd love to just talk. Just do like how I do it, you know? Just talk for 2 hours about whatever comes into your mind. Like, to me, I do try to like these are pieces, and I'm talking about things that have resonances with each other for me. So, like in this, I've talked about what? I've talked about tons of shit. My new chat book, how life, there's no beginning and ending. I've talked about long form TV shows. I've talked about, Marshall McLuhan, how everybody needs to be in every, and so all of these things are sort of adding up to a feel about, Shakespeare, I talked about that a lot, how the technology influences the artist, a person who's great in one medium might really excel in another, or not at all, you might have one talent that like I mean, it seems to me like that's what our consumer culture in the economic culture does, is it finds people that have an ability to sort of like create something that has an audience that people will pay, and like that artist can just sort of like, hopefully produce that. It's their thing, it's their sound. Nobody else can do it. It's their style, and the audience sort of, and it's like, but it's like they have to sell that, they have to market it, it has to appeal to tons of people, they have to be able to put it in a package. Like with John Lennon, it's like they want the Beatle albums, but they don't necessarily want, his fucking sound experiments or some shit like that. Like, he's not necessarily, but he can produce this other thing that just like the record companies know they can make shitloads of money off of, like he was born with the talent or something that like he's one of the few people that can do that. And so that's, those unicorn type people, like the corporations get a hold of, and they make them into these god kind of celebrities and make them rich and make them famous. And those people, have everything, their records go everywhere. And then the rest of the people are sort of like local artists that, I just don't know if our generation and younger are getting the opportunities to mature the same way. We're not getting nurtured that like these artists were. And maybe those were just the people that made it through and were successful, but like, even like my dad, for instance, right? He was able to make an entire career as a live musician, from the age of 15, he started playing in recording studios to now, really. I mean, he never made a lot of money, and he lived way under the poverty line, and sort of like, that wasn't all he did, but like, more or less, that was like a steady income for him his whole adult life. I mean, I suppose that opportunity is still out there, but I would say that there's probably less of an economy for that now. Now it's like even fucking big name acts can't make a living hardly. And so it's like, do we have the same environment that's going to nurture artists into real, like, no one's ever going to, who's going to get a huge record contract? Who's going to be riding around in limousines on jets? Who's going to be playing to 40,000 people? Who's going to be, I mean, everybody has to monetize their work through social media now. That's like the way that we are, in the free market of the capitalism that's been foisted upon us. We are meant to financialize and professionalize our art. And if we can't do that, then it's just like a hobby. We're not talented. We're not geniuses or whatever, like these pop stars, like these celebrities, like the people who have it all, seemingly, right? Who are culturally significant and win all the awards, the Nobel Prize in Literature, who are also rich as fuck, who also get to have sex with whoever they want to and travel the world and everybody, bows before them. Uh, Everybody's sort of trying to win that jackpot, I suppose. um, but at the same time, you can conduct your artistic life in kind of a cool way. If you can just like not feel that scale kind of like throwing that shadow over you, um, although I mean the economic pressures that are upon us are different than our parents, and so once again this goes back to how we're not being nurtured right. We can't live in the East Village. We can't live in fucking Chelsea like our parents could, like the New York school could. Like the New York school, they could all live in the fucking East Village and shit until the 80s or whatever. They still have rent controlled apartments. That is what nurtured that scene. That's what nurtured those artists. I mean, there's beautiful things happening poetically all over New York City, in spite of the fact that we've been pushed to the edges, right, and to the limits. Bushwick, Bay Ridge, Midwood, Ridgewood, the Bronx, Queens, Jersey, and beyond. Fucking Ohio. Kansas City, wherever. It's just like we gather on the internet now. We make do with what we have. The energy courses through the current circuits, the current technologies. The medium is the message. But once again, when you get into places where you're experimenting, and this is something I'm coming up with in these comedy clubs. The comedy clubs are a really great manifestation of like what the kind of dumbed down popular audience, at least the comedy clubs I've been going to. There's a whole other thing going on with alt comedy and like Brooklyn comedy and like, actual cool like kind of art comedy. But I go to these clubs in Manhattan that are like Fox News. They're all Fox News. And, if you try to do experimental comedy, I thought because Matthew Silver was going in there or whoever, friends of mine, that like at least the audience would be like sort of like, oh, okay, this guy's, but like, I don't know. It's easy that you hit the wall really fast in these clubs and like, they're all practicing this kind of like brutal, misogynistic, like these old kind of like forms of like, we're going to use race and blah, blah, blah. This is going to be like the crux of our humor. And so if you go in there and if I try to do this, for instance, the audience is kind of like hostile, or at least they look at you like you're the retard. Sorry, pardon my French. I don't mean to use that word. I do want to talk about this too. I'll get back to this in a second. Yeah, they look at you like you're the one that's like, dude, what the fuck are you talking about? I didn't understand anything you said. What the fuck was that? It's like, that's because everybody's using these same kind of bland, emphatic forms. In poetry, they do the same thing. It's all these emphatic musics that's just like, okay, so I did want to talk about gay and retarded. I think it's too much. It's gone too far. There was a moment where I understood, like, okay, people said shit's gay and retarded, like, literally, like, basically my whole life until I was, 25 or something, probably. Or 20, I don't even remember when people, yeah, probably 25. Probably, somewhere in that era is when we kind of grew out of that, I guess. But now there's like this moment where like people are sort of like reclaiming, the privileged people are reclaiming some of their territory back. And so now it's cool to say like you're gay or like that's gay. Well, okay, so this is I want to talk about this in the context of the group poem, right? Because one thing I do, I'll get it, at the open mic is I pass around this poem, this notebook every week, and people write a group poem, right? I encourage this. I'm encouraging people to try to be geniuses and artists and work at the top of their intelligence, as Del Close taught us. Everyone, if you treat everyone in the audience like they're poets and artists, they will be, is what Del Close said. Well, this proves no, that is wrong, because I tried to treat people like they're poets and artists, and they act like idiots. They act like stupid middle schoolers. That's how I feel. I literally, and maybe that's why they did it, but I feel like, some kid wrote some like really mean thing like on the board or something, or like wrote me, and I'm like, wait a minute, who did this? Who fucking wrote this? And I just think it has gone too far. I just think. So somebody wrote that something was gay a bunch of times in the book, and or like people, so and so is gay or you're gay, and I'm just like. I get it. Okay, this is what comedians do. This is what they do. Especially the comedians in the Manhattan. It's like it is this kind of hardball in a way. I don't know. There's a little bit of a leftover of that. This kind of bro Rogan, like I said, Joe the plumber kind of thing. And so it's like, yeah, you're gay, and it's like, I don't think it's cool. I don't think that's cool. And I don't, I passed this thing around thinking that people were going to write like some really interesting thing. And there is some, don't get me wrong, there's some really beautiful stuff. And the poems and the work has been really beautiful. But I'm also like, I don't want to encourage this. Like, if there is, and to be honest, I just thought this is how the comedy world was. I just thought everywhere you go, they're all fucking like jerks and like making fun of each other and just being assholes. But it's like, no, maybe it's just these fucking people in Manhattan. I don't know. But it's like, I don't necessarily feel like, I'm not, like the other open mic that I see is like, it's the queer LGBTQ open mic. And it's like, yeah, I would definitely go to that. But it's like, are they really want to see me? I don't know. Like, that's not what's indicated on the flyer per se. Not that it's not inclusive, but it's like, the other thing is I just don't live in Brooklyn. So it's like I've been going to these Manhattan clubs trying to break in. It's like, it's kind of this hateful culture. I feel like it might be underfunded by some kind of right-wing shit. I don't know. Because it really does feel like there's some kind of like insistence on keeping it this way. Like, let's keep it. Like, everything in Brooklyn is like progressive, even like Caveat, right? It's like super progressive and cool. It's great. Like, that's actually what's exciting that's happening in comedy. All of the good comedy you're going to see is like in Brooklyn. It's not these jack-offs. No offense. But it's like I'm clashing with the culture, right? And I've been trying to sort of fit in with it or try to learn it or something, but it's like, I definitely don't want to invite like a homophobic vibe in any way, shape, or form into what I'm doing, right? And so people should be smarter than that. It's just stupid. Like, we're past that. We don't say that shit's gay anymore, okay? We don't say this. It's just stupid. Come up with some new thing, right? And I don't know. The point of the poem was to like... But now I just feel kind of ashamed. I'm like, I can't even pass this around. Like, what if people who look at this gonna think? If I pass this around the room, they're gonna read it and be like, well, yo, what the fuck? Where am I? I'm in some kind of hateful, like, and I definitely don't want that. So I apologize. Like I said, it's just stupid. People should be smart. They should be as smart as they can be. And I get it. This is what comedians do. They just push the button they're not supposed to push, right? And they have to be, but I don't know. This is, I think, part of the friction. I wish, and we do get like alt comedians coming in and sort of avant-garde performance artists. I love it when they do. The economics of the situation are not necessarily the most inviting to that, which I understand. But whereas, like, this is 2-drink minimum culture. Like, if you go into any of these comedy clubs, on McDougal or Bleecker, it's the same show. It's $20 ticket and a 2-drink minimum. So it's like, somehow these audiences are conditioned to, like, this and they expect this. Whereas, you know, I love it all, but like the comedians that are stand-ups in the more pure sense of the word, who I find interesting, are the ones who are just more kind of like talking about stuff that's interesting and have an interesting take, and they do have good jokes and punchlines and stuff, but it's also like that's not necessarily integral. You know, I've said this before, I suppose, but like, you know, part of what I'm trying to do with this open mic is bring the comedy world closer to what poetry is doing, but also bring poetry world more to like the real conversation a little bit more. You know, like for better or worse, these comedy clubs are manifesting like a lot of what's out there. You know, like because the comedy impulse is just to say whatever the fuck thing comes into your head. It's like it is a catharsis of sorts, and it does well. It's a catalyst, right? But it's also a popular medium. You know, a lot of people. That's really more what it's about. It's not necessarily bringing the poets to what the comedians are doing, although more like in a performative sense. You know, like poets could stand to be more entertaining, I would say, which is part of what I'm trying to experiment with and pioneer. But also, like, the comedians have a huge audience, you know? So it's like, what can the poets do to sort of get a piece of that audience, really? You know, people are looking to these comedians to be the modern day philosophers and to sort of like feed and provide content for like public thought consumption. You know, people are listening to Joe Rogan podcast because it's deep, right? They listen to it because, you know, it's easy to say Joe Rogan is like a Neanderthal or this or that, but it's like, you know, he is deep in like the cliched sense of the word, in that like he talks about, you know, DMT and life, and, you know, he does try to get to the heart of like what the fuck is going on politically, or, you know, he doesn't always have the best, you know, like point of view. He doesn't always invite the best people into his fucking show, but like you can tell that he's trying to get answers, and he's trying to have like it's a conversation, right? Somebody said My Dinner with Andre was the first podcast, and over the past 15 years we've seen this flourishing of podcasts, right? And sort of the art of conversation becoming a form. I think that's really exciting. I wish I was more involved with that. You know, this is my podcast, right? But conversation, the art of conversation, is something that I've always tried to capture when I was writing screenplays and shit like that, and in my poetry too, right? That part of My Dinner with Andre, right, is friends talking, and that the humanity and the life that's involved with that. Two people face to face having a conversation. I think there's a lot of lonely people out there, and, you know, maybe people that can't express it, they think it but they can't say it or whatever. I've always felt this but I could never say it. Then I listen to Joe Rogan, and Joe Rogan kind of, you know, he crystallizes the public dialogue for certain people, right? Or he gives people something to think about. He's just one example. That's a dumb example, I guess. Any of these fucking shows are food for thought. And I think that's exciting. But I think poets, in a weird way, have kind of missed out on it. Like, poets would be perfect for this medium. They would be perfect for, like, an entertaining, because no one is better than at talking, you know? Poets and musicians are kind of the best talkers, I would say, because they use their mouths constantly. But I don't know. I haven't started a fucking podcast. Lenny Bruce is dead. We'll go for 2 hours. We're doing 2 hours. Thank you for watching. Once again, we're at Easy Paradise every Monday at KGB Red Room. We're upstairs. I think we've got System Lord coming this Monday. You don't want to miss that. It's going to be exciting. It's going to be really fucking dope. System Lord, back in the Red Room for the first time since January. So it's the first time System Lord's been in residence at Easy Paradise in 6 months, if you can believe it. And I'm going to do a sound collage. So look forward to that. It's going to be like an awesome sound collage for the first hour. That's Monday. We've got July 22nd at Young Ethel's. That's a Saturday night. We're going to have great music. It's the summer concert series. Come out for that. And then July 27th at Auto Shrunken Head, we're going to have a New York City Poetry Festival kick-off official bookend event. No, it's not official. It's not officially sanctioned by anything. Just like everything I do. It's unofficial. It's cooler to be underground, right? You know, everybody wants to be a social media influencer, but it's cooler to be unknown, I thought. I'd love to have a photographer at the open mic on Monday. If anybody out there is a photographer and they'd like to take pictures, I'd love to crowdsource the photography. You know, if people just want to send me pictures every week, and I'll just make a post out of that. I'm kind of sick of. I'm not sick of doing it, but like my phone really is not good camera, and I don't really want to take a camera every week. So it'd be nice if somebody else did it. Plus, it's just like, it's an open mic. It's meant to be like Occupy. It's meant to be like Occupy, you know, the Red Room. And so it's like you are the open mic, you know? And so send me the pictures. You know, send me flyers. If you want to make a flyer for the open mic, you know, if you want to make a fucking post, maybe I'll do an Instagram takeover. Who wants to do an Instagram takeover for the open mic? So, you know, I want to crowdsource it and make everybody a part of it in a bigger way, because that's the nature of it, I would say. Because it's an open mic, I really do feel like everybody's part of it, and the congregation, you know, it's meant to be church. This is meant to be your church. What did they do at church? They sang and they read poetry all fucking day, right? They worked 6 days a week. That shows you that people can do it, right? Well, that's a bad example, but work 6 days a week. On the seventh day, you go to church all fucking day. That's not a good goal. We want to work like not at all ever. No work, only on art. We work on art constantly. And I am trying to get back to work. I've been a little bit too lax. I do need to like kind of get down to brass tacks and like woodshed on something. I don't know what exactly. I don't know how to take it to the next level, I suppose. But I am kind of looking for a new form. I love doing these chat books, and I'd love to keep doing them, but I'm also kind of looking for something new. And in a way to make it new, right? I need some kind of new thing to stay ahead of the game, because now everybody's kind of making these chat books. I gotta stay ahead, you know. Everybody's doing open mics, everybody's doing readings, outdoor readings, this, that. I gotta stay ahead, you know. I gotta be a thought leader and an influencer. So yeah, if you want to make a flyer, if you want to make a video, if you want to make a meme, the one, the only, the Natalie made this incredible meme I just posted. I can't wait to get off this so I can get my dopamine fix and see how many people liked it. See if I got 40 likes or however many, so I can get my jonesing for my social media approval and my validation from. We're gonna go jam later with this. I can't talk about it. It's a secret musical project, but it's very exciting. So that's cool. I got that, and then yeah, once again, July 29th at New York City Poetry Festival. I'm gonna book some things for August. So yeah, this is part of what I'm trying to do with the open mic now, is do these events outside, which I didn't have quite enough bandwidth for during the school year, but now I do, because I'm not working quite as much. And so now I'm booking these other events with people from the open mic who I think I'd like to give people a little more time and like give them the spotlight a little more, as a, you know, to just sort of I I don't know, it broadened the expanse of the creative endeavor. And so I posted one of those. I'm starting to look more, at the event as a form. And so, I can film the whole event, right? Like with the first Easy Paradise thing, it's like it's all one work, really. Free paintings, then Joseph and the Severe Dudes, then Josie and T. Cocker, then System Lord, then Bryce, then Ashley. It's all one kind of, it fits together in kind of a fun way. So rather than isolating the performances and being like, here's the System Lord video, here's the Joseph and Severe Dudes video, it's like, no, let's put it all together. And like, I encourage people, not that the sound quality or the video quality is very good, it kind of sucks actually, but I do encourage people, if you have during this summer, one way to stay connected, if you want to, as you go out into your world travels, and as you're on airplanes or long drives or, just kind of chilling in Lake Como or Paris or Athens or Tokyo or Sao Paulo or Mexico City or Havana or Mozambique or Timbuktu or Cairo or Dubai or Pakistan or Sri Lanka or Singapore or Perth or New Zealand or Antarctica or Tierra del Fuego or the Patagonia or anywhere you might be. I encourage you, this is your way to stay in touch. Like and subscribe. I would love that. Watch my vlogs. They're meant to be epic life films. Go back to the beginning and watch all of Scenes from a Life. It's worth it. I think. I don't know. I haven't rewatched it in a while, but it's all there. Stay connected. So watch the Easy Paradise Summer Concert Series on YouTube, sponsored by Budweiser. This Bud's for you. Been listening to Kid Rock. Fuck Facebook, fuck Twitter. No, Kid Rock sucks. Fuck Kid Rock. Well, I was ironically appropriating his music for, I did a stand-up routine last Saturday. That was sort of like a performance art. I really have to go hard, to really make an impression. God, what else do I need to talk about? Book me. Book me on stuff. Please, God, book me. Book me. Book me. I'll do comedy. I'll do poetry. I'll do anything you want. I'll play music. I'll do a good job. If you want me to do a good job, I can really tone it down and be nice and sound nice. I won't do my extreme performance assault. I want to play outside. I want to play at the beach. I want to play on rooftops. Just book me. I want to host things. I want to do performance art comedy. So, I want to do, okay, what else? What else do I need to talk about? I'm trying to get around to other people's events as much as I can. I have been going to more stand-up comedy stuff because it feels like something that, like, there's just kind of more practice in it, more freedom in it. I kind of get to do enough poetry stuff because I've been getting booked on stuff a little more, although not as much as I'd like. Please book me. But I'm trying to figure out something interesting with the comedy form. That was kind of what was interesting watching about that Lenny Bruce documentary is you can see early in his career he does like impressions and shit. He does voices. He's kind of like Sid Caesar. He was like a burlesque comedian. He was playing these kind of like joints basically, and he was married to a stripper, right? But you see, he had this energy, man. And to be honest, this is gonna sound crazy, but like he looks a lot like Ed, and they kind of have a similar energy where there's this weird like zaniness and like determination, but also like there's an intelligence there and like a zeroing in on things that like is what made. But Lenny Bruce, it's like you just get the feeling he just had tons of fun. He made these movies that seem like kind of incredible. He has this one called Dance Hall Racket, which is an incredible title. that he just like paid for. His friends are in it. He directed it, I think. His wife's in it, Honey. And you can tell he was just having fun, like making this movie. But it's kind of like a movie Ed Wood made. He's like slapping the other actors around. He's really dominating everything. Not that I mean, I don't mean to be a jerk or critical or anything, but it's just like they said he was the last performer that was ever put on trial for obscenity, for words used during a performance. Is that true? I guess that's true. Has Marilyn Manson or any of those people been put on trial? And it did kill him. Like they made a conscientious. They made it the police apparatus at that time definitely cooperated, and the judicial in all these little towns, they persecuted him every fucking where he went because they didn't want him to perform there. And it's like, but his force and his determination and that particular person's energy, like he didn't back down. He understood that what he was doing was acceptable and not obscene, and that they were wrong. And he was the kind of person that just didn't back down. He didn't let them change his mind, and that's one reason why I think all those performers of the 60s and shit, the boomer generation, kind of has that admiration for him. It's like he's like he died for them. But I mean, if you watch George Carlin, especially his early stuff where he's doing his impressions and stuff, he's ripping like a lot of stuff from Lenny Bruce. The voices he does and just how he his face, his whole demeanor is kind of ripped from Lenny Bruce. I guess they were arrested together. Talk about a rite of passage and a passing of the torch. Lenny Bruce and George Carlin were busted together at some club on McDougal Street, the Cafe A Go-Go. Honestly, that's why I go to McDougal Street. Because I'm like, how did it go from the place that like fucking John Coltrane and George Carlin and Woody Allen and Richard Pryor and all these and Taylor Mead and all these people are playing McDougal and Bleecker, and now it's the Fox News of fucking stand-up comedy. And there's no poetry anywhere. It's like, what the fuck? I mean, that's gentrification, that's money, that's the, new neo-Gilded Age New York that we live in. And we are cast in scale against the super talls. The super talls are new. That's for goddamn sure. And I think they do indicate a profound change in our society. Once again, it goes back to this Joseph Campbell thing about the tallest building in any town indicates the values of that town, right? Up until the 19th century, the tallest building in any town was the church. The church steeple was the tallest thing because that was the highest priority of the whole fucking town. Then it became the skyscraper, right? The commercial building, the corporate, the Empire State Building, the World Trade Center, whatever. Now, the tallest buildings are these fucking super talls, which are they're private empires, and they're empty. They're basically safety deposit boxes. And that indicates, I think, a value change in our society. We went from being religious-minded, God-minded to, the Empire State Building was still like a place of business. It was still like a community endeavor or whatever. The skyscraper, was like an office building, right? Where that's corporate power, right? Maybe government, all of that taking over. Our society is now governed by money, by the bottom line. Now it's the same thing, but now that money is no longer in these sort of American life insurance or whatever the fuck it is, some kind of like, you know, company with a union or benefits, or, you know, the CEO only made, you know, 3 times the employee, or, you know, now it's like, now it's all about personal fucking wealth. It's all about these personal empires, these apartments that cost $300 million. Like, that's the fucking tallest building, right? The super talls. And it's also just like a height bias. I'm gonna fucking harp on this till I fucking die. But there absolutely is a height bias in our society. People, if you are tall, they trust you more. They just think that you're more capable. If you're short, they think you're like a little kid. They think, who the fuck is this little kid trying to tell us what to do? Like this fucking person. So the super talls, you know, are empty. They're just tremendous wastes of resources. They kill the environment. They pump tons of fucking CO2 and chloroform because they're air conditioned. There's nobody even in them. You know, there's nobody who even, you couldn't possibly, there's no use value. They're purely like decorative, and they're basically like money laundering, you know? They're private. I suppose this is comparable to like being some kind of like sultan or like some kind of private palace or something. It's like a sky palace. You know, the super tall, you can't fucking live there. It's purely emblematic of your personal wealth. It's like crypto. It's just like a fucking, it's the blockchain that indicates, hey, I'm a baller. I can't even go up there because you get motion sickness from all the sway. So it's totally impractical. You know, these buildings, on the other hand, this is the San Remo or something. It's like, oh, people always start watching 2 hours in. I think YouTube does this to me. I think you have to stream for 2 hours before they start to show people. But I'm just about to get off. So thank you for, oh, now 3 people are going to show up. Great. I'm lecturing about how the priorities of our culture have changed. I have to get off. I mean, it's been 2 hours, so I was just about to get off. Thank you for watching. Once again, I'm going to pimp my gigs. Easy Paradise Monday. Wave to System Lord will be in the house. Be sure to like and subscribe. Go back to the beginning and watch from the beginning, because it was a dynamite lecture. This was my Thoreau lecture. This was my Norton. This is my Charles Eliot Norton lecture. Episode 2000, where I prattle on about the same shit over and over again. I'm sure I repeat myself all the time. Watch System Lord. They're like my children. My bands are like my children, you know? I love them all. So System Lord, Monday at Easy Paradise. July 22nd, check us out at Young Ethel's, the summer concert series. The Easy Paradise summer concert series continues with the Wing Zing, the Easy Paradise Wing Zing. We're going to have a summer Ted Nugent, ZZ Top. It's going to be fucking rip your face off. July 27th at Auto Shrunken Head, we've got the New York City Poetry Festival kick-off, unofficial, unauthorized kick-off, launch, bookend event. Don't want to miss that at Auto Shrunken Head. We're going to have poets. We're going to have comedians. It's going to be magnificent. It's going to be terrific. We're at the New York City Poetry Festival, July 29th, 11 a.m., bright and early. It's going to be experimental. It's going to be gorgeous outside, church of the word. And every Monday, I'm setting stuff up for August. If you have a gig, book me on stuff, please. Book me. I do a lot of stuff. I juggle. I got these dogs that like do tricks. Book me for August. I'm wide open. I need dates for August. I'll read from my new chat book, Central Park. Get the book. My book launches Monday. Come out to Easy Paradise Monday. Get these copies. They are so hot. Make it new. This is as new as it gets, people. This is right hot off the presses. All the news, all the hot gossip is in there. You're probably in here. You are probably mentioned in this book. There's probably some highly personal information that I am exposing and immortalizing forever. There's probably some kind of personal judgment that I made against you and made publicly in some kind of weird way, like I do. My work is just like an x-ray of my psyche, and I just put it all out there, baby. So all the secrets are exposed for you to just attack me with and for you to beat me over the head with, everybody. That's my gift. And people don't even think it's poetry, and I don't even claim it's poetry. These are my cosmopolitan micro diaries, okay? I'm a gossip columnist, okay? I'm like Rex Reed, okay? I'm not whoever got the idea I was a poet, you know, these are my rag sheets. These are my gossip rags. So make sure you get it. It's got a lot of juicy details. I spilled the tea. I spilled the tea all over Central Park, okay? So this is my Uptown book. There's only 20 copies. I'm going to print more if the first one sells out, which you know, I don't know. Who knows? I'll give them away probably. See me at New York Poetry Festival. I'll have all my books at New York Poetry Festival. You can buy the entire run of Rotcore. The entire, you know, they're like Marvel Comics. That's the way these are my comic books, right? I'm the Stan Lee of Cosmopolitan Micro Diaries and gossipy poetry. So this is my Uptown book. City Life is my downtown book. This is the bucolic pastoral of rambling, ambling, roaming, and just divining, using the divining rod of your psyche to just sort of feel your way through the day. Find the magic of the poem of life, okay? Life is the poem. That is the goddamn point of the book. You go into the book and you live the poem, okay? That is the fucking point of the book. So make sure to like and subscribe. And 24/7, 365 poetry. It's always poetry. I'm merely an accountant. I'm taking meeting minutes. Thank you for watching. Easy Paradise Monday. Make sure to sign up. Make sure to watch my newest vlog, Eric Romer movie. It's probably one of the best vlogs I've made yet. I really think it's a good vlog, and it moves fast. It's not like my other vlogs, which are 3.5 hours long. It moves fast for only being an hour. It's only an hour and 6 minutes, everybody. So check out my new vlog, Eric Romer movie. Go back and watch from the beginning. Click like, subscribe, follow, tell your friends. Yeah, get my new book, and we'll see you on Monday. We'll see you soon. Thank you for watching.